I got home earlier than expected, feeling that warm little thrill you get when you know you're about to surprise someone you love. Honestly, I was already picturing Kevin's smile, the way he'd pull me into his arms and say he missed me. But the moment I stepped into the living room, everything inside me stopped, like my heart forgot how to beat. There she was, Camilla, sitting on my couch as if she'd paid rent that month. For a second, I wondered if I'd walked into the wrong house because none of it made sense. But then she looked at me with that smirk, and reality hit hard. My voice came out shaky at first, half stunned, half furious, because who expects to come home to their husband's ex lounging comfortably in their living room? I asked her what she was doing there, and she answered with the kind of confidence only someone who's rehearsed the lie can have. According to her, Kevin had invited her, told her I'd be out until late. Hearing his name in her mouth like that made something burn deep inside my chest. I felt this mix of betrayal, disbelief, and a rage so sharp it almost tasted metallic. Every word she said felt like she was twisting a knife I didn't know was already there. And when she leaned back and told me not to pretend I didn't know how bored he got with me, God, that one hit like a punch. I could feel the heat rising in my face, the kind that comes from humiliation crashing into anger. Part of me wanted to scream, another part wanted to laugh at how surreal the moment felt. But before I could decide what to do, before I could even breathe properly, the doorbell rang. That sound cut through the room like a warning, a signal that something even bigger was about to unfold. I walked toward the door with that kind of anger that makes every step feel louder inside your own head. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from that cold, shaking fury that happens when someone crosses a line you didn't even think needed guarding. I was ready to throw Camilla out right then and there, to demand answers from Kevin, to somehow make sense of the mess unraveling in my own living room. But when I swung the door open, the universe apparently said, not chaotic enough. Standing there was Jenna, another one of Kevin's exes. And my stomach dropped so fast it was almost dizzying. She gave me this awkward little smile, the kind people give when they know something's off but can't quite place it yet. She asked if Kevin was home, casually, like it was the most normal question in the world, and in that moment, all I could think was, you've got to be kidding me. Behind me, I heard Camilla groan dramatically, like she was the one being inconvenienced. Jenna recognized her voice instantly, and watching her face go from confusion to shock was almost like watching my own reaction from a few minutes earlier. It was a twisted mirror. Two women, both blindsided by the same man. I stepped aside, not because I wanted her to come in, but because I needed to see where this avalanche was rolling. As the two of them exchanged accusations, double takes, and unfinished sentences, I felt something shift inside me. Not weakness, not fear. Something sharper, steadier. I told them both they weren't special, that Kevin had apparently scheduled them like back-to-back appointments. The energy in the room changed instantly. Tension thickened, eyes narrowed, breaths hitched. And I could tell, this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Standing there with both of Kevin's exes in my living room felt like being trapped in some twisted social experiment. The air was thick, almost heavy, as if the walls themselves were trying to listen. Camilla crossed her arms like she owned the place. Jenna looked like she wanted to evaporate, and I was holding myself together with threads. Every second, new thoughts hit me. Questions, doubts, flashes of conversations with Kevin that suddenly felt suspicious in hindsight. It was dizzying, realizing that the life I thought I understood might have been a carefully managed illusion. I watched the two of them look at each other, and for a moment, I saw something almost painful. Confusion, betrayal, that awful sting of realizing you were never the only one. Camilla's bravado faltered just slightly, and Jenna kept twisting the strap of her purse as if grounding herself. And I swear, even through my anger, I felt a strange connection forming between us. Not friendship, not sympathy, just that raw understanding of what it feels like to be manipulated by the same man. It was like standing in the same storm, drenched and shivering, trying to understand how long it had been raining. But beneath all the shock and chaos, I felt a fire starting to burn. A clarity that cut through the noise. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about truth. Uncomfortable, ugly truth that we all deserve to uncover. And as another long, tense silence dragged across the room, I felt something deep inside me settle. If Kevin thought he could juggle the three of us without consequences, he was about to learn otherwise. And little did I know, the night was just getting started. I stood there for a second, just trying to process the fact that two of Kevin's exes were now in my house, uninvited, unannounced, and apparently scheduled like some bizarre rotation. My pulse was pounding in my ears, the kind of frantic rhythm that makes you wonder if your own body is trying to warn you of something bigger. I turned toward the door, ready to drag Camilla out by the wrist and send Jenna right after her. But anger has a way of sharpening your senses, and I suddenly needed answers more than anything. Answers Kevin clearly wasn't going to give willingly. Jenna stepped inside with this hesitant look, like she still wasn't sure if she was interrupting something or walking into a trap. She kept glancing between me and Camilla, confusion tightening her features, until she quietly asked why Camilla was there. The moment the words, "my night with him," left her mouth, a cold wave washed over me. Hearing it from someone else, so casually, so innocently, made everything real in a way it hadn't been seconds before. It felt like watching a puzzle complete itself against your will, each piece landing with a sting you're not prepared for. Behind me, Camilla let out an annoyed sigh, as if Jenna had ruined her evening plans instead of exposing Kevin's double life. Their bickering began almost instantly, their voices rising like a storm swirling around me. But underneath their frustration, I heard something familiar: pain, disbelief, the bruised ego that comes from trusting the wrong man. As they argued about who was promised what, I felt myself step back from the chaos, almost observing it like a stranger. And slowly, with every word exchanged, the pieces of Kevin's lies started aligning into something far uglier than I had ever imagined. The moment I said, "Apparently he wanted both of you tonight," the entire room shifted. It was like someone had dropped a match in a room full of gasoline. Jenna's eyes snapped toward me, wide and hurt, as if she'd just been punched with truth she wasn't ready to swallow. Camilla rolled her eyes, but even she couldn't hide the way her jaw tightened. Watching them absorb the reality, that Kevin wasn't just lying to me but juggling both of them, felt like witnessing two mirrors crack at the same time. Their faces carried the same expression I had worn minutes earlier, disbelief dipped in humiliation. Jenna stepped closer, clutching her purse strap like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She whispered, "He told me you two were divorced." And the crack in her voice was so faint that for a moment, my anger softened. Not toward Kevin, never toward him, but toward the way he had played all of us like pieces on a board. Camilla's mouth twitched, like she wanted to laugh but couldn't, the truth landing heavier than she expected. She muttered that he'd said the same thing to her, and suddenly the three of us were connected by something none of us asked for. Not love, not rivalry, just shared betrayal. I felt myself breathe differently, slower, steadier, as if my body recognized a strange shift inside me. I wasn't alone in this disaster. We were all standing in the wreckage Kevin created, each of us stunned in our own way, each of us trying to rewrite the story we thought we knew. And as I looked at their faces, two women I had no reason to trust, no reason to comfort, I felt something unfamiliar rising in me. Not pity, not solidarity, something sharper, something that whispered that this tangled mess wasn't just exposing Kevin's lies. It was building towards something none of us saw coming yet. For a long moment, none of us said anything. It was strange. Three women who had every reason to hate each other suddenly frozen in the same shock, the same betrayal, the same sinking realization that Kevin had played all of us with the same script. I could feel the weight of their stares drifting toward me, as if waiting for me to explain how long I'd known, whether I'd suspected something, whether I'd somehow been part of the lie. And the truth was painful. I was just as blindsided as they were. That shared disbelief hung in the room like thick fog, blurring the edges of everything. I took a breath, steadying myself before I spoke, because I needed them to hear the clarity in my voice. I told them I found Camilla sitting in my living room as if she belonged there, and Jenna's jaw dropped again. I could see the shame rising in both of them, not because they'd been involved with him, but because they'd believed him. Believed his words, his promises, his excuses. And in that moment, their anger shifted, no longer at each other, but at the man who had lied his way into all our lives. You could practically feel the temperature in the room change. And as the tension swelled, something unexpected happened inside me. I felt that first spark of strategy, that first hint of a plan beginning to form. Not revenge yet. That would come later. But the awareness that this situation, as humiliating as it was, could be used. That the three of us, standing there in our shared disbelief, suddenly had more power together than Kevin ever expected. I looked at the locked door, knowing he'd walk through it eventually, and a quiet, dangerous thought settled inside me. Maybe he should walk into this exact moment. The moment the two of them truly processed what was happening, everything erupted. Camilla shot Jenna a glare sharp enough to cut glass, as if she'd been personally betrayed by her presence. Jenna fired right back, her voice trembling but fierce, demanding to know why Camilla was even there. And suddenly, I was standing in the middle of two storms colliding, each one fueled by lies Kevin had fed them, each one convinced the other was the problem. Watching them shout over each other felt surreal, almost like I wasn't part of the scene but trapped in a front-row seat to chaos I never signed up for. Camilla accused Jenna of being obsessed, saying Kevin told her she'd begged him for another chance. Jenna's face twisted with hurt and disbelief as she shot back that Kevin said Camilla was the unstable one, the one who couldn't let go. Hearing their accusations echoing through my house felt like listening to Kevin's manipulation in stereo. Two versions of the same lie dressed in different colors. My chest tightened, not just from anger, but from the sickening realization that this man had woven the same story for all of us, just changing the names depending on who he wanted to control. Something snapped inside me then, not in a destructive way, but in a grounding one. I raised my voice, louder than I expected, louder than I had ever spoken in that living room. I told them to stop, told them they were tearing into each other when the real problem was standing somewhere outside that door, blissfully unaware of the trap he'd built for himself. The room went silent instantly. Two pairs of eyes turned toward me, shocked, waiting. And in that heavy stillness, I felt it. The exact moment when our anger finally aligned. Jenna was the first to break the silence. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper as she asked, "Wait, you mean he's cheating on his wife?" Hearing the word wife come out of her mouth like a question, like she wasn't even sure it was real, made my stomach twist. I nodded, slow and steady, letting the truth settle in the room. Watching the shock spread across her face felt like watching someone's heart crack open in real time. She sank onto the arm of the couch, eyes glassy, processing the fact that she hadn't just been misled, she had been used. Camilla's expression shifted next. Her smirk faded, replaced by something heavier, shame, anger, betrayal tangled together in a way she couldn't hide. She muttered that Kevin told her he wasn't married anymore, that they were separated, that I had moved on. Hearing her repeat his lies felt like replaying a nightmare with new subtitles. For a moment she looked down, her confidence slipping, and I realized she wasn't the villain I wanted her to be. She was just another woman Kevin had groomed with the same tired script, another person who trusted the wrong man with the wrong heart. The silence that settled afterward wasn't empty. It was loud, thick, almost vibrating. We were three women standing in the ruins of the same deception, holding pieces of the same shattered story without knowing how they fit. I could feel their anger turning, shifting direction like wind caught in a new current. No more fighting each other. No more being played against one another. For the first time, we were aligned, not out of choice, but out of necessity. And in that moment of collective clarity, I felt something deep inside me begin to sharpen into resolve. I looked at both of them, really looked, and something inside me shifted. These weren't enemies. These weren't rivals. These were two women standing in the same emotional wreckage I found myself in, each of us blindsided in different ways, each of us holding on to the same bitter truth. Kevin had lied to all of us. That realization didn't just sting, it steadied me. I felt my breathing slow, my spine straighten, as if anger was finally becoming focus. I wasn't spiraling anymore. I was planning. Camilla lifted her chin, trying to mask her shock with attitude, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "So he played all of us," she said softly, and for the first time, her words carried no bite, only hurt. Jenna wiped her cheek quickly, as if embarrassed by the tears forming there. "I feel stupid," she whispered, and God, I understood that feeling. I wanted to tell her she wasn't, that none of us were, that we were lied to, manipulated, gaslit by the same man who claimed to love me and promised them whatever suited his agenda that week. Instead, I just nodded, sharing a moment none of us ever asked for. And standing there, surrounded by all the broken truths, something unexpectedly powerful settled inside me. A spark, a direction, a thought that wasn't born from pain anymore, but from clarity. If Kevin could orchestrate this mess so confidently, then he clearly never expected us to compare notes, never imagined the three of us in the same room, united by the truth instead of divided by his lies. That was his mistake. And maybe, just maybe, it was an opportunity. I felt the idea forming, quiet and dangerous, waiting for the exact moment to take shape. The idea came to me so naturally it almost scared me. One moment I was drowning in betrayal, the next, clarity slid in like a quiet whisper. I looked at both women, still stunned, still piecing together the lies Kevin had fed them, and I felt this calm rise in my chest. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, something colder, sharper, purposeful. I told them to stay. The words left my mouth steady, controlled, almost serene, and watching their confused faces twist into curiosity felt like watching the first domino tip. Jenna tilted her head, skepticism flickering behind her eyes. "You mean, wait for him?" she asked, like she half expected me to snap and throw everyone out. Camilla's expression transformed almost instantly. Interest, amusement, a spark of vengeance lighting behind her smirk. I could see the shift in both of them, the moment they realized I wasn't crumbling under the weight of Kevin's betrayal. I was standing, planning, choosing a route forward that none of us could have predicted 10 minutes earlier. And surprisingly, they were willing to follow. We moved into the living room like a silent formation. The three of us positioned ourselves across from the door, arms crossed, breaths steady, anger simmering just beneath the surface. The room felt charged, as if the walls themselves were anticipating what was about to happen. Every tick of the clock made my pulse echo louder in my ears. I kept picturing Kevin walking in, humming, relaxed, untouched by the chaos he'd created. And for the first time that night, the thought didn't make me want to collapse. It made me want to watch him unravel. It didn't take long before I heard his familiar footsteps outside. Light, careless, the rhythm of a man with zero idea his entire world was about to collapse. A moment later, the door opened, and Kevin walked in humming, holding a bottle of wine like he was arriving at a romantic evening I had apparently forgotten to plan. His smile was bright, relaxed, so painfully confident. But the second his eyes landed on the three of us, it evaporated. Completely. He froze mid-step, face draining of color like someone had unplugged his soul. I watched the confusion hit him first, then panic, then something almost comedic, him glancing from one ex to the other like he was trying to calculate how badly he'd messed up. His mouth opened and closed twice before sound finally came out. What is this?" he stuttered, gripping the bottle so tightly I thought it might shatter in his hand. There was something deeply satisfying in seeing him speechless for once. After everything he'd orchestrated, after every lie he'd told, now he didn't even know which excuse to start with. I stepped forward slightly, not enough to get close, but enough to make a point. "Your guest list arrived early," I told him, my voice steady, calm, almost conversational. Jenna added a sarcastic, "Wrong night, Kev?" from her spot on the couch. And Camilla, arms crossed and smirk fully awakened, chimed in with, "Or did you think you could handle all three of us?" His eyes darted between us like he was trying to choose who to lie to first. But the beauty of the moment was simple. There was no lie left that could save him now. Kevin's mouth finally moved, but no real words came out, only broken pieces of excuses, half-formed sentences, and panicked breaths. I can explain," he stuttered, voice cracking in a way I had never heard before. And watching him scramble like that, it didn't bring me joy exactly, but it brought clarity. That man wasn't devastated. He wasn't heartbroken. He was terrified of losing control. Every excuse he tried to muster fizzled out the moment he realized none of us believed him anymore. His lies suddenly had nowhere to land. Jenna stood up slowly, her expression hardening as each second passed. "Explain what?" she demanded, voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. "Which version do you want to start with?" Camilla stepped forward too, her smirk now gone, replaced by raw anger simmering under her skin. "Tell us again how you're not married, Kevin," she said, her tone dripping with contempt. For the first time, he didn't look at me. He looked at them. As if maybe, just maybe, he could beg his way out of this mess by appealing to the women he'd lied to the longest. But they weren't biting, and I stayed quiet, watching him unravel in real time. His shoulders rigid, his breath uneven, his eyes darting around as if searching for a door that wasn't there. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were pushing him toward the truth he'd been avoiding. And as I watched him squirm under the weight of his own lies, I felt something rise inside me again. Not pity, not hesitation, but purpose. I wasn't finished. Not yet. Kevin still needed to hear the one truth he couldn't manipulate or run from. I stepped closer to him, not enough to touch, just enough for him to feel the shift in power. My voice came out calm, almost eerily steady, the kind of tone that says the decision has already been made. "Get your things," I told him. "You're leaving. Tonight." The room went silent in an instant. Kevin blinked fast, like he couldn't understand the words or maybe hoped he'd misheard them. But I didn't repeat myself. I didn't need to. He felt the finality in my voice. He knew I meant it. "Maria, please, let me explain," he begged, stepping toward me with his palms open like he was offering peace. But I held up a hand before he could take another step. "Explain to them," I said, nodding toward Camilla and Jenna. "I'm done listening to a man who schedules his cheating like business meetings." Watching the panic ripple across his face was almost poetic. Every lie he'd rehearsed, every excuse he'd prepared, it all evaporated the moment he realized I wasn't playing my usual role. I wasn't the forgiving wife tonight. I was the one writing the ending. Jenna's breath hitched as she finally found her voice. "You told me she was out of the picture," she snapped, pointing at me. Camilla shook her head in disgust. "And you told me she was the crazy ex," she added, her tone dripping with betrayal. Their anger surged again, but now it wasn't directed at each other. It was aimed squarely at him. Kevin's shoulders collapsed under the weight of their voices. And while they confronted him, I walked toward the hallway closet with a strange, quiet calm, because I knew exactly what I was going to do next. I reached into the hallway closet and pulled out the suitcase Kevin used for his weekend work trips. It felt heavier than it should have, maybe because this time it wasn't luggage. It was consequence. I set it down right in front of him with a soft thud that echoed louder than any words I could have said. His eyes widened and he let out this pathetic little gasp, like the sight of that suitcase suddenly made everything real. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply stepped aside and let the moment sink in. Behind me, the Exes were relentless, every question sharper than the last, every accusation landing like a punch he couldn't dodge. Jenna demanded dates and timelines. Camilla listed every lie he'd told her with a disgusted clarity that made him shrink smaller and smaller. And Kevin, the man who once carried himself like the center of the universe, looked small, cornered, exposed. Part of me wondered if he even recognized himself in that moment, or if the veil of his own lies finally lifted enough for him to see the truth he'd created. I picked up the suitcase again, dropped it at his feet, and looked him dead in the eyes. "You wanted a full audience," I told him. "Now you have one." He flinched, actually flinched, like the truth stung worse than anything the other women had said. His lips trembled, and he whispered my name like it was his last lifeline. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The room had shifted completely. The power he used to cling to had slipped right out of his hands and into mine, Jenna's and Camilla's. And for the first time, he realized he had nowhere left to hide. Kevin dropped to his knees, not dramatically, not romantically, but desperately the way someone falls when their world caves in faster than they can process. His hands shook as he reached for me, but I stepped back, watching him crumble under the weight of everything he'd built on lies. Behind him, Jenna and Camilla circled like twin storms, their voices sharp, demanding, unfiltered. Every truth they threw at him landed in the air like shards, and he flinched at each one. It was the first time I'd ever seen him without his confidence, without his charm. Just the truth. And the truth wasn't pretty. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to shout. Instead, I spoke with the kind of cold clarity that grows only in the aftermath of betrayal. I told him the landlord was coming tomorrow, that the lease was already transferred into my name, that he would not be living here another night. His face crumpled, confusion mixing with disbelief, like he never imagined I'd be capable of choosing myself. But that was the irony. He never really saw me. Not the way I saw him now. Small, hollow, terrified of a life where he wasn't in control of everyone around him. I turned and walked away. Not because I needed distance, but because he needed to watch me leave. With every step, the weight on my chest lifted. Behind me, the exes kept firing questions, demands, accusations, their voices rising and overlapping, tearing through whatever remained of his fantasy world. And I didn't look back, not once. Because my revenge wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, it wasn't messy. It was simple. I exposed him, stripped him of every lie he'd built, and walked away with my dignity intact while he drowned in the wreckage. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole again.